right, this is Steve Shoney. I'm the city manager for the city of Upper Arlington. As always, that was our theme song by the one, the only, the incomparable Colin Gall. I am here with my co-host and sidekick.
This is Darren Schulman. I'm the city attorney.
And before we talk about our first guest today, Darren and I were featured. It's amazing that it's taken this long for us to be featured on a magazine cover, but we were featured on the cover of Tri-Village magazine, and the title of the article was Law, Order, and Laughs.
Yes. I have to say, I had a hard time getting my headphones on for this episode because my head grew so big.
Your head grew. But now that we have the Law, Order, there we go, and Laughs, it has given Brian, the producer, the opportunity to experiment with our first ever audio drop.
This whole episode is going to be Law and Order.
Our first ever audio drop. So when you hear the Law and Order coming in, it is a reference to the magazine article.
So do you think that, like, I'm the law and you're the order, and we're both the laughs? Or I'm just trying to, like, really break into this?
I don't know, man.
You just like the sound. You didn't really delve into it.
So speaking of Law and Order, you missed a drop.
This is Brian. You have one job. Actually, you have like 5 jobs. But.
Speaking of Law and Order,
all right, we may have to stop it.
I have to stop saying that. So speaking of those two words, we have with us today a member of our police department, Officer Don Stanko. Don, welcome.
Thank you.
Officer Stanko is part of our school resource officer team. He has spent the first half of this year, because we had some folks out on medical leave, helping to cover Hastings as well as a bunch of the elementary schools. He's shifted back to having his focus on our elementary schools. But we were talking the other day. We have kind of an internal employee resource group that kind of gets together and just has informal meetings. And Officer Stanko started talking a little bit about some stuff I didn't know about you in your past, and talking about all the work that you've done on crimes against children and internet safety for kids and families. And I thought it would be great to have him on and talk a little bit about the things that you've done in your career and how you've kind of helped move it forward. So thanks for coming on this morning.
Yeah, so let's go back to this informal meeting you're talking about. That sounds way too formal for what we did. It was more like coffee with friends.
Yes, it was.
We had a group of people that maybe, you never met before, but we all work for the city, and we got to sit down and get to know each other.
Yeah.
And I think that's really good work.
It was a little bit like this. Mm-hmm. It was sitting around a table.
I also like how he said with friends and not like with friends and Steve. So I mean, you were part of that.
I'm a friendly kind of fella.
I think so.
Do you think?
I'm glad to think Don thinks so too.
Remember, I am the
very first time I ever met you, I was on a call right down the street from you, and you called in because you found a wallet. And then I see this guy come walking up who looked a little lost, but I felt he was friendly enough, and sure enough, it was you. And you were like, "Hi, I'm the city manager." I'm like, "Oh, nice to put a
name with
yeah." Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I tend to be pretty obnoxious about when I see, whether it's you and your colleagues or somebody from the public service department out and about. I'll just like roll up and be like, "Hey, how's it going?" People are like, "Oh God, here he comes." But you guys are always very polite to me, so I appreciate it.
You know what? We get people coming up all the time and wanting to just say hello or talk, and it really kind of makes my day. It's being able to interact with the people that we're here to serve.
Yeah, and it is great. And I do, one of the things that makes me really proud about working with our police officers is the kind of the culture you guys have internally about how you...
Here's some sirens right now.
There go some of your colleagues.
On cue.
Working with you and your colleagues about, or watching how you and your colleagues interact with the public, because it's just, hey, we're here, we're part of the community, we're just trying to help everybody out, and I've seen it happen in lots of different ways. So which is fantastic. So why don't you run us through a little bit of kind of the things that you've done both in formally as part of your job and kind of also outside to really work on making sure that kids are safe in the digital age.
So to do that, we have to go back all the way to 1991 when I first started in police work. And back in the day, I would grab my clipboard and my hat and get in the cruiser and drive off.
Now, were you at UA? Did you start your career
No,
here?
I started it with the city of Fairlawn.
Okay.
And I grew up there.
State area, right?
It's right kind of west of Akron, Ohio.
Oh, okay.
You're thinking of Fairborn.
I was thinking of Fairborn, right.
But let me tell you, it is really hard to work in an environment where you grew up because people know you as that kid. And then now that you're an authority figure, it's really weird. One of the tipping of the scales was having to go to a domestic dispute involving one of my best friend's parents.
Ooh,
What credibility do I have about saying, oh, yeah, I know what it's like being married? No, I had no idea what it was like being married. So, yeah, I decided to, come to Upper Arlington and start new. But back then, the law applied to the physical world only. Then in the mid-90s, we started seeing the shift of this internet becoming more widestream. It is becoming a part of people's lives. And all of a sudden, 1996, 1997, I start getting reports of parents coming up and saying, my child's having this horrible time online. They're getting harassed and bullied. Or they're sending a picture to them that's obscene. And this is when we first realized, okay, does the law apply to the digital world? And if so, who has venue? I mean, who would actually file a criminal charge? And no one knew the answer, really. And that was a big learning curve. So in the late 90s, we started seeing a shift from physical world policing and digital world policing. And we're seeing a brand new generation, the first of its kind to ever live in a dual world reality, where they live in the physical world 100% of the time. But they also visit this digital world, which is every bit as real as the physical world. There are good and bad people in both, good and bad neighborhoods, and good and bad consequences based upon the things you do or choose not to do. So how do you tackle that? So the first thing we had to deal with was cyberbullying. How do you deal with something if you don't really know who it is? Back then, tracing, internet protocol addresses was really hard. John Priest, an officer that used to work with us, he was down at the Internet Crimes Against Children's Task Force. He was one of the first ones to kind of crack that code and try and figure out how to place a name with this series of digits. And that was a big game changer. But as the digital world progressed, as technology improved, we started seeing different challenges come up. So at first it was just mostly texts. Okay? The texting was a problem. Bullying, cyberbullying, whatever you want to call it back then. Then we started seeing pictures being produced. So, the very first digital cameras used to use like a 3-inch floppy disk.
Yeah.
And the quality of the pictures were terrible. But when they started getting better photographs through smaller cameras, then we started seeing an uptick of people, taking inappropriate photographs, sending them out to whomever. And we're realizing, okay, now sexting's a big issue.
Right.
Then the video component of it became a really big problem. And then from video came, live streaming. And then live streaming now turns into, the latest issue is, the AI chatbots.
AI chatbots can do our show for us on occasion, Steve.
They can. So what are AI chatbots doing that is less fun than when Darren had one create a. So Darren, for one of our guests, had an AI chatbot create a plot for a Hallmark romance movie. I assume that the AI chatbot stuff that you're talking about is
more nefarious than that.
not quite as wholesome as maybe a Hallmark movie script.
So, in order to kind of really reveal how an AI chatbot can go bad, let's take a look at what technology really is. It's a tool. And like any tool, it can be used properly or improperly. You can use the safety features or you don't use the safety features. It all depends on the user. Mm-hmm. Technology is powerful. So if you look at an AI chatbot, what it does is it learns from you. How you use it, it tailor makes how it replies to you. So what we're seeing is a lot of people are getting, chatbot apps like Replica, and they're tailor making their best friend, which is really, artificial intelligence that has nothing behind it. It's not another human being, but it sure acts like one. And how you interact with it is what you're going to receive. So we're seeing a lot of people, maybe using them inappropriately, where it gets a little more, NC-17, maybe even X-rated. But also, this is something that can actually really confuse kids. I mean, a kid gets into an AI chatbot and starts developing a friendship with something that's can't even deliver what the child needs. Okay. Now, the reason why I see this coming is because I know one truth that is across the board. All humans need, specific things to live. And, being a kid is tough. If your needs aren't being met in the physical world, they're going to go to the digital world to meet those needs. If they can create an AI chatbot that's their best friend, they're going to do it. Now, on the surface, that seems pretty tame and not really a big deal, but psychologically, I don't know what kind of outcome that could bring. I do know that the digital world has a habit of making really safe, innocent things look dangerous, and really dangerous things look safe. But yeah, it's.
So it sounds like for that trend, it comes back to doing everything we can to make sure that kids have healthy relationships in the physical world as a bulwark, if you will, against that over-reliance on the digital world.
Yeah. Yeah. So you definitely want kiddos to have someone that they can go to for help. And I tell them, problems are like shirts. They're not all your size. If you find that your shirt is too big, you need to go to someone for help.
Dude, can I steal that phrase? That's
sure.
a cool one.
Yeah.
I'll give you attribution when I use it. Problems are like shirts.
I stole it from somebody else. So
okay.
Go ahead. But yeah, sometimes mom and dad, they're a great place to go. But sometimes they're in a situation that is really uncomfortable to talk to mom and dad about. So they need an aunt or uncle, grandparents, best friends' parents, someone that is an adult, makes good decisions, mom and dad trust, to go to for some good guidance or help. So yeah, the digital world has a lot of cool things about it, but it has a lot of things that are dangerous, just like the physical world. So back in about 2009, I had already been studying the digital world for, almost 15 years. And I identified that this was becoming a really big problem. And there was a little bit of a vacuum of people that were able to talk about this issue and give kids some really good advice. So myself, along with two former officers that worked with us, Brian Carell and John Priest, we formed a nonprofit organization. It was Digital Innocence Recovery Group. In the beginning, we would offer our help to law enforcement agencies that didn't have the technical skill to find missing children. So if a child met someone online, complete and total stranger, and they ran away, we would have the ability to go in and help out. That quickly morphed into, the organization being rebranded as Digital Danger and going in and talking about safety issues to students, parents, adults in the business world. And we would talk about the basic issues, with kids. What out there do you have to worry about? What should you be concerned with? And what is generally pretty safe? And then if things do go wrong, if that shirt is too big for you, who do you go to for help? There's kids issues, okay? Those are smaller shirts that if mom and dad try and put them on, they'll look ridiculous, right? So when two kids are going at it, fighting about who the best band is, mom and dad shouldn't roll up their sleeves and get involved, right? They stay out of it. So,
it's Weezer, kids.
Yeah. Nice reference.
Yeah, you like that?
But yeah. And then, there are issues where mom and dad should get involved. Now, does that mean mom and dad call up the other parent? That never goes well. But think of yourself as their tactician, You're bouncing ideas off of them. You're the one going, I don't think that's a good idea. That could get you into trouble. How about if we think about this instead? Then there are school issues. When can the school get involved with an issue? So if it happens outside of school grounds without school technology, when is it a school issue? Well, it's a school issue when that child comes to school and let's say everyone branded them a nickname on the internet and now kids are using it in the school hallways and that child doesn't want to go to school or it's affecting their ability to function or perform as best as they can. Now it becomes a school issue. But sometimes it becomes a police issue because maybe they're breaking the law. Like I know Darren and I, we were talking about, impersonation, like when is stealing someone's identity a thing? And when you use someone else's pictures, you use their name and you're posing as them, but you're saying things that would never come out of their mouth. Okay, now we're talking about a crime here.
Yeah.
But these are things that, even I had to sit there and say, okay, Darren, I'm a little lost here. Can you wrestle with this? Because right. I need help.
Well, and it's one of the things that I really appreciate about it, the SRO program, the School Resource Officer program, is everybody looks at it and I think they're like, oh, well, they're there to protect against active shooters and all these kinds of things. And yes, that's part of the role is making sure that the schools are physically secure. But so many times it's much more the work that you're doing to be in the schools to do two things. One is be there for the kids to be another person to fit that shirt for some kids. And then also the ability to really be there to help the school administrators through and the counselors and the teachers and everybody through these really tough issues because, you can't expect a third grade teacher who's trying to manage 20 completely crazy hyper kids and get them educated to also understand the up-to-date latest best practices in terms of cyberbullying. So right. I really do appreciate that the partnership and the way that you and all of your colleagues on the SRO side do, because it's really super important. I think that part of the job gets lost when we focus on the physical security part because it's so very important.
And one thing I can definitely tell you about all the school resource officers that are working and everything from the high school all the way down to the elementary is each and every one of them brings their personality to that as well. So it becomes really a more authentic interaction with the kids, the staff, the administrators, and they've developed some really great relationships. When I was filling in over at Hastings, students and staff were like, when's Officer Luke coming back? When's Officer Luke coming back? I mean, they love him.
What am I, chopped liver? I'm right here,
And they definitely create a presence in that school, and they bring a piece of themselves there. And if there's anything that I've learned about law enforcement is if you make yourself a real human being, people see you as a human being instead of just seeing the uniform. I mean, back in the 90s, I started a fencing program over at the high school. I did that for 16 years.
You started that?
I did.
Steve and I saw them when we went to the
saw
school.
some kids over fencing, yeah.
It's still there.
Well, Carol Moore, she is getting back into the program. She roped me back in there now to kind of help coach the kids. And I mean, when I did it, we traveled all over the country competing. I mean, we were 16-time state champions, and it was really a great time.
Can I ask how you decided on fencing? Like, did you fence back in the day? Like, that's a very specific skill. Like, hey, I'm going to start a fencing club.
Yeah, I did. And then I was fencing over at the Columbus Fencers Club, where Dr. Charles Simonian, who was the former OSU coach, was fencing there, and he was, teaching. And I met some high school students, and they're like, hey, we really want to start a fencing program. How do we do that?
So I think it would be really cool if...
You thinking what I'm thinking?
Go ahead. Let's see.
No, you go. I want to see I want you to go first.
I think you need to carry a sword.
Yes.
Dude, if I could, I'd do it in a second.
It's called something else, right? Like a rapier or something? Or
you know what?
Foil. It's called a foil.
Well, you've got three weapons. You got foil, you got epee, you got saber. I mean, it could be any one of the three.
Do you have equipment like that you own?
So
yeah.
By city charter,
you're the safe.
I am the chief law enforcement officer. I might have the ability to right here, right now, because I am in charge of get the drop ready. Because I am in charge of law and order in this town. That was a one drop comment. That did not need two drops. To all of our 5 listeners, and we apologize. Brian is still getting used to the audio
excited.
drop. He is excited. I think, Darren, I'm hereby asking the city attorney to look into whether I can authorize Officer Stanko.
Not authorize, require.
Require.
Let's be real here.
Require Officer Stanko to carry, I think, a rapier.
I've got those.
So what's now we're in a rabbit hole, but before we get to that,
ahead.
I will issue that proclamation. I'll write the proclamation, but before we do that, we need to test to make sure how efficient it is. Can you get Steve and I to do it?
You know what?
Do you have equipment?
I could not only teach you how to do it, but I could have you fence each other.
That's what I want.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, you have the equipment because I don't know.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, Steve.
Yeah.
We're on the air, so you can't back out. You and me.
So how much of an
Fencing.
advantage is my reach in this?
So reach is a pretty good advantage, but timing and reaction speed.
Oh, I'm toast, but I'm doing it anyway.
Also, kind of planning and thinking, because there's
thinking?
reactionary fencing where you see an opening and you just go for it. But then there's a whole other layer of deceit, which Darren might just have you on.
No,
part.
I will freely admit, Darren is sneaky fit.
Yeah,
He is. He's like sleeper fit. I mean, he just kind of sneaks it up on you, and he is fair. Darren, take your headphones off so you don't hear this. He is relatively intellectually capable.
So you're saying there's a chance.
So, and I am old and slow and uncoordinated, and I will probably pull something doing this. Because
you are the only person I've ever met who got hurt playing pickleball.
I did pull my calf twice playing pickleball, and I was over at the firehouse on a Saturday morning when they had recruits in, and so I passed, and Darren has passed with a fairly good time, the physical test that they do for recruits, and threw my back out in the process. So Darren, you will also have to draft a waiver for me before I do
sign
this.
Our own waivers.
No, you'll be fine.
Do people get hurt doing this?
Can he put my eye out doing it?
So I mean,
you have a thing, right?
You could get hurt, but you're not going to get stabbed. You're maybe going to twist an ankle or something like that.
Oh, we could do that. That's fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
yeah.
So can I get a commitment that the three of us will have a Steve Darren fence?
Oh,
off?
absolutely.
What about Brian?
Brian's tall, and I've played basketball with him. I don't think we want to.
Oh, Brian's going to pull the old bad shoulder trick on this.
My shoulder's broken. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
my shoulder.
Brian's welcome to join us.
Brian can't walk down the road without falling over and breaking his arm. So,
So what we're going to do is we're going to set up a duel for you two.
A duel.
And now, to avoid all of the really messy rules, because with saber and foil, you have something called priority, which means whoever starts an attack first gets the right of way.
Oh.
So if someone starts an attack and another person counterattacks and hits that person, unless the person who started their attack totally misses and doesn't hit anything, they're going to lose.
but whose responsibility is it to repair the sidewalk in that right of way?
Well,
You get.
so we're going to have you guys do epee, which has no priority whatsoever. It's basically a whole body as a target, and whoever hits first gets
Is that the
point.
one where you just kind of lunge real fast as opposed to like Three Musketeers?
You know what? It is a little more subtle. So yeah, the big parries don't normally happen because let's face it, your arm is a target, your hand's a target, your whole body's a target, your toe is a target. So
There's some parts that are not a target.
Yeah,
Can
we
agree to
got
that?
one part in particular that we will agree, gentlemen's agreement is not part of a target.
So, in that case, Steve does have a little bit of an advantage on you because of the reach. However, Darren has a sleeper ability that you're not really even taking into account. Has nothing to do with his fitness or his sneakiness.
What's that?
Darren knows cosplay.
I do know cosplay.
You see, I do my research, and I come in knowing who I'm talking to.
What does that have to do? Just because he's gonna have some kind of a costume where he's gonna come in looking like D'Artagnan?
Well, he's familiar with like how people use weapons in the movies and stuff, and maybe he'll pull out something that he learned from Black Widow, and you're in trouble.
So basically, you're telling me I need to go back and watch Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
That would be a bonus.
It'll be like Indiana Jones, where the guy's like doing all the things, and then he just pulls out his gun and shoots. Steve will be like doing the sword, and I'm like, I got a Nerf gun. How do we get this rabbit hole? But we do have a good commitment. I'm really appreciating the conversation.
Just to be clear, because the other thing that has happened with our police department is there are certain of your colleagues that are obsessed with trying to get Darren and I to agree to be tased.
By certain members, like 90% of them.
Yeah. Which you had a very good comment, which you called that an IQ test, and if you say no, you've passed.
Absolutely.
So anyway, I just want to be clear: the weapons are not electrified, right?
No, they are electrified. However, you don't get a shock because everything's grounded. It's a closed circuit.
Okay, all right. I think we will have the building department come and inspect that electrical connection, particularly if Officer Petty is anywhere in the vicinity, because I think Officer Petty will. I don't trust.
That's Sergeant Petty. Do you?
Oh, Sergeant Petty.
Now he's definitely putting out a battery in that foil for you.
So, well, if something happens to the electricity, it might be Officer Petty. So,
I'm excited for fencing madness. We need to. I think we need to get. Was it Margie who did the branding?
Yes.
We need Margie to come up with a good brand for our fence off.
we do need, yeah.
I mean, you could
Fence-a-palooza.
possibly sell tickets to this. I mean, I see this as a really big event.
This could be a fundraiser. Yeah. Down, we'll see when the Schottenstein's
This
available.
is the bad thing about this interview. Like, I'm super excited to do this. So if like this does not happen, I'm going to be crestfallen.
Oh no, it will happen.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
We
Like,
have
this
the
isn't
tools.
a joke.
We have the ability.
We have yes.
Right now, I'm starting to think that maybe this should be like the opening match to the state tournament that's coming up in April. I mean,
like an
that would
exhibition.
be pretty good.
Before the people who know what they're doing go, they're two old dudes who are going to try to swing.
two old guys.
Never done it before.
Yeah, that'll go over real well. So back to talking about internet crimes against children.
Smooth transition.
Call me the king of the segue. So to make sure that children don't feel like they've been stabbed by the internet. So anyway, so how on earth did we end up on your fencing stuff?
He started a fencing club. or team.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. We were talking about SROs, everything the SROs do in the schools. We talked about how you got involved in the fencing club. So kind of coming back to that role, it is fundamentally about keeping kids safe and that holistic approach that you all take to the health and safety of kids. And every chance I get, I want to thank you and your colleagues for the work you do and the approach that you take to it. I do want to come back to, as we wrap up, your thoughts from your, 30 years of experience doing this, 30 plus years of experience doing this. What are the things that parents can do to keep their kids safe? What should they focus on? And the other thing that I also kind of would like your input on is, what do you tell parents when they start to feel overwhelmed by all of this? Because it can feel like it's so big, it's so scary, and it almost becomes where you feel like the need to completely try and disconnect your kid from the digital world, because that's the only way to keep them safe. But we also know that doesn't keep them safe, and they're going to have to learn how to deal with it. How do you talk to parents about how to balance that desire to close off from the need to teach your kids that this is something you're going to have to deal with in life?
So I'm a big proponent of pro use. I think they should use technology. I think they should use the internet, but responsible use. Just like anything, any tool requires using the safety features attached to it, as well as, knowing how it works. You don't break out a chainsaw and say, I've got this, and, fire it up. You read the instruction manual and figure it out first. So every time your child wants something, make sure they're ready for it. Now, the technology alone isn't the really big problem. It's really the emotional side of things, and where your child lives here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, there's this asynchronous development that happens. Now we heard about, asynchronous through all the pandemic and all the Zoom calls and stuff. This is something we were using, 10, 15 years ago to explain how a child's ability to navigate the physical world, far exceeds their ability to navigate the digital world. For example, conversations that you have online. Every time I go into a school, I say, how many of you have ever said something to someone through text message and completely made them mad without even trying? And every hand goes up. Well, it's because in the physical world, you have that ability to communicate pretty effectively because we get feedback, body language, tone of voice, facial expressions, all that kind of stuff. In the digital world, you don't. You're running kind of blind. So the first thing I'm going to tell parents is that when their kids have an argument online, teach them when to let go of the rope, step back. Because if you're arguing and you say something and try and get your point across and it falls flat, then you do it a second time. Anything that happens after that's just going to escalate that conversation into a full-blown fight. Know when to step back and say, hey, we'll talk about this tomorrow. That's one of the big issues. And here's the thing. Parents always ask, well, when is my kid going to be ready for a cell phone? And my answer is the same every time. If any expert, in quotes, says your child should have a cell phone at this age, do not listen to them. There are far too many factors at play. That person doesn't know your child, what type of risk-taking behavior they have, how good are they at solving issues that pop up or emergencies. And they don't know your abilities of being able to parent that child. How much time do you have to spend parenting a child in the digital world when you got your hands full in the physical world? So, no, you're the best person to go to when you're like, okay, is my kid ready for, a cell phone that can download 1 million apps? Well, think about it. How does your kid deal with social emotional issues? How do they deal with problem solving? And really, how big of a risk taker are they? Are they impulsive? These are things that you can gauge yourself. And when you finally decide, okay, I'm going to give my kiddo a cell phone, make sure that you're the one that can load up the apps on it. Don't let them have free reign on whatever app they want to throw in there. And if you're really curious about what's going on, how's my child using that phone? You know what? At the end of the day, go into the settings, go into battery, look down at the battery and see what percentage of the battery is being drained by what apps. Because it has a list. And it can tell you how many minutes they're online.
I'm going to do that right now.
They can tell you how many minutes you're using Snapchat or TikTok. Because every time I go into a school and I talk to the kids that are using TikTok who are in 5th and 6th grade, they're not even old enough to really use that app. So how many of you have been scrolling through TikTok and then you notice that 2 hours later, boom, you're here and you've done absolutely nothing but scroll. And every hand goes up. So these are some of the things that should be on your radar, knowing how they're using the technology and how many hours they're using it and being able to manage that. Then, of course, an internet curfew. Yeah. We have a curfew in the physical world. So why not in the digital world? They're basically the same. The physical world and the digital world, they all need rules. Because honestly, not a lot of good happens after 11 o'clock at night. So they really shouldn't have that phone, A, in their bedroom, B, in the bathroom, C, in their hand when it's late at night. Not to mention that when people get tired, their patience draws a little thin, and sometimes those conversations and those arguments happen pretty late at night. And then we start looking at, the parent's ability to get on that phone and just see what's on it. Your child doesn't have a lock on their bedroom door that you can't get through. So they shouldn't have a lock on certain things on their phone. You should have free reign for all that. And if they're using an app, find out why. Find out how it works. Find out how good they are at navigating that app. Because we see that a lot of problems happen when a child first starts using an app because they don't really know how it works. Take Snapchat, for example. Kid uses Snapchat and says, oh, wow, I can take this photograph and in 10 seconds it's gone and I don't have to worry about it. And then you get this notification that says, oh, that person did a screenshot. Oh, man, I didn't know that could happen. And then all of a sudden they're using it and they're like, okay, I know they can screenshot it and all that. And then the next thing they know is that a developer somewhere, developed an app that works with Snapchat where they can do a screenshot of your photograph, but it circumvents Snapchat's ability to send you a notification that they sent it. And then the next thing you know, that photograph is going around school and everyone's talking about it. Yeah. So yeah, the digital landscape is a lot different than our landscape. I know Tremont Road's going to be there tomorrow, barring any major issues. Yeah. But in the digital world, the rules can change on you.
Fishinger right now feels a little less certain. To our listeners, that's purely intended as a joke. Fishinger Road is simply under construction for the next year and a half.
Like your disclaimer voice. When you have these discussions with children, does it resonate, or are they in that kind of developmental stage where they're like risk-taking and it can't happen to me and no one can tell me what to do? I have a 4-year-old, so I'm freaking out right now.
So, you know what? There is some level of awareness with them. When I go into a school, a lot of times, the staff members are like, oh, man, I'm so sorry they were talking during your presentation. I said, no, I want that. Because guess what? What they were talking about was what I was talking about. That's a success. That means I hit a nerve. They're talking, they're processing it, they're discussing it. They're aware of the issues and the dangers. Now, their ability to navigate them and their ability to, keep their impulsivity in check, now that's always going to be an issue. And, let's face it, even adults have a problem with impulsivity. Sometimes we do before we think. It is impossible for a child to navigate the digital world without parents being there to help out, because we all need someone behind us saying, I don't think that's a good idea. Even as adults, it's good to have a sounding board. Let's face it, Darren, you're like the ultimate sounding board for the police division. Before we do anything, we're like, hey, what do you think about this? And you're like, I like it. Go with it. Or let's take a look at this a little deeper. Have we tried this instead? Because maybe you have just a different view that makes things crystal clear. So that's really your job as a parent, is just helping them navigate that, helping them become proficient, and getting them to realize when that shirt is way too big for them and they need help. And I tell the kids, it's a success when you go to mom and dad and say, I was doing something I probably shouldn't have been doing, but I really need your help. Because your mom and dad are sitting there going, okay, they goofed up, but I'm hearing about it. Not through someone else's parents, not through their best friend, not through their older brother or sister, but they're coming to me, and that's a success. Because life is about making mistakes and learning from them.
One of the best pieces of advice I got from somebody with my kids, and I love my kids dearly, but they are not perfect, was, the most important thing is to make sure that your kids feel like they can come and talk to you no matter what.
Yes.
And that reaction to when they screw up, because every kid does, you have to kind of check it and make sure that get that balance between accountability and consequences, and love and openness, and saying that it's okay. You screwed up, but you didn't compound it by being dishonest and not talking to us and waiting too long to come for help. So that is, just from my experience, it's raising kids is hard, and it's easier. Fortunately, we're in a place that is physically safer than most, and the physical world is safer than most, but we do not have a bubble. We do not have that ability to kind of shut things down.
I'll tell you what, Steve. One thing I'm getting at with you as a parent that I'm hearing, and I think every parent fits this very specific role, is that at one time or another, you're going to feel like you totally messed it up.
Yeah.
And what I've learned in 31 years of law enforcement is that if you're a parent and you think you've completely messed it up, you're one of the good parents. Because you realize that could have been done better. What did I learn from that? The people that think they have it all figured out, they're missing the point. They're missing that moment where they're like, that didn't go as well as I wanted it to.
Yeah.
So, you're one of the good ones.
Oh, I feel good now.
I can't add anything nice to Steve.
So we started this off as though this was going to be kind of one of our intro things. I think we're going to do this as this week on a very special edition of Won't You Be Our Neighbor? Because Don, you've been great. I mean, I think this is something where these are messages that we need to continue to try and get out to our parents and our families any way that we can. I want to thank you again for the service that you've provided, not just in your day job, but the passion that you and your colleagues have had to take this out and do more of this on your own time, because it matters. One thing that I always knew, but kind of has gotten driven home to me in this job is it seems simple to say, but nothing is more important to people than their kids. Definitely. And the more that we can do to provide kids knowledge and resources, parents knowledge and resources for their kids, and provide the resources directly to the kids, I think we can't do enough of that. So thank you. Finish on this question. If a parent has a question, needs some advice, wants somebody to talk to, they should do what?
They can always reach out to me. Okay. I field probably dozens of calls per week, maybe 40 or so per month, at least, of parents all over the state that call me up and they're like, Officer Don, I don't know what's going on with this, but I just need pointed in the right direction. Yeah. Because, sometimes kids do get in over their head. There are some really not so nice people out there that can take advantage of a kiddo when they think they're just having fun or they've made a friend. Yeah. And if it's over my head, I know people that I can go to for help as well. But between all of us, we'll find a solution. The one thing these kids need to know is that if you're dealing with something that you can't handle anymore and it's in over your head, I can make it stop today. Yeah. You just need to tell somebody about it.
Yeah. And what I would add to that for parents here in UA is tell your kid they can always go to their school resource officer, whether it's you or it's EJ or it's John Rice or it's Officer Luke or
Officer Goodman
or Travis is back, Travis Goodman's back. Yeah. Any one of those officers and their school counselor, the kid can go to those people, and that is a place, to your point, that is the right door, whatever door it is, to get to somebody who can make it stop.
Oh, absolutely. And each and every one of those officers can, easily point them in the right direction, give them some good guidance, or, if necessary, roll up their sleeves and say, you know what, now this is criminal behavior. We'll get to the bottom of this, and we'll help you out.
All right. Awesome. Darren, any last words?
Fencing's going to happen. We're not going to let you slip out of this one.
No, I'm down for the fencing.
Okay.
And what we need to do is we need to figure out whether we can require him to carry some sort of a sword.
Definitely.
They're really long, right?
You know what?
Can you put them in like a scabbard?
They come in all sizes. We could custom make
scabbard.
One.
You were looking for a reason to say scabbard.
And do we want to carry it on our hip, or do we want to do like
over the
back?
Oh, like Excalibur or something.
We could go a lot of different directions.
I think. Can you imagine the reaction of the kids when you walk into an elementary school with like a sword strapped across your back?
They'd think it's totally cool.
I know that's what I mean.
Right, exactly.
In the infancy of this. In this country we live in, it was the norm for people to carry swords on a daily basis. It was like a piece of jewelry. They would be, gold and silver encrusted and incredible, wraps to the handles, decorations to the blade. They were a piece of art.
So when I was a sophomore in high school, I went on a class trip to Spain, and I have like a full-size sword from Toledo.
Dude, nice. You're the public safety head, man.
So
bring that in.
Can I use that for our fencing?
Probably not.
You know what? You probably can't use it for fencing, but here's I'm just going to throw this out here.
I might take a limb off of Darren with it.
Sounds like a real sword.
I'm just going to throw it out there. As police officers, we have to do an oath.
Yeah.
To hold this office, and I think that should be incorporated.
Oh, like knighting them. Like
yes.
When they swear. Oh, you got to dub them. I dub thee. Officer.
Why didn't we have this conversation?
Just had a promotional.
I could have dubbed our new lieutenant.
Yes.
And our new sergeant. I could have. Oh, man.
You still do another ceremony. You're the boss.
Yeah. Well, I think I know what's going to happen at someone's retirement when that comes along, and then not to. Yep. And whenever that date comes along, I think I know what part of the retirement ceremony is now going to be.
So say it's not always been that way,
Yeah, I know. That's what it's going to be.
Darren, when you start figuring it out and decide whether or not I could carry one on duty, just come over to my house. You can see all the different types that I have, and then you can just pick the right one. Yeah. It could be,
So when we have the fencing contest, is this going to be like an old time duel where where we pick our weapon
from the case?
From the case. So you're going to have them laid out on a table for us?
This won't be like old school dueling. I mean, back in the day, they used to put a drop cloth on the ground, and then the first person to drop a drop of blood on there lost. Okay, we're not going to do that. Okay, we're going to keep you guys safe. But yes, you will be able to go to a rack and pick out your weapon.
This is happening.
Mm-hmm. Do you think pickleball is good training for this?
You know what? There are some benefits to pickleball. You know, being able to do that reactionary speed, changing, positions and directions real quickly. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, good.
I'm pretty confident I'm going to lose, but I'm willing to try.
I think you're gonna totally smoke me. Again, you are sneaky athletic.
I am, and I do everything I can on pure effort, but I have to admit to our listeners that you have blocked my shot 5 times in basketball.
And it feels really good when I do it.
And it's so frustrating. Everyone laughs, and so I just have visions of that, and then this sword somehow doing the same thing.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's going to happen. We'll find out.
You know what?
Place your bets now.
It could go either direction. I mean, Steve's got the length, okay? He's got the reach. But you have this sneaky component where, yes, you could be a reactionary fencer where you see an opening and you go for it. Or you could be the type of person that shows an opening and hopes that someone goes and tries for it. And then when they do, you're like, boom, and you got him.
So, no, here's what Darren is much more straight ahead, bull in the
I'm
china
just going
shop.
in.
When I say sneaky, I don't mean subtle. Yeah. There's a difference between sneaky and
it's just
sneaky
I'm
and
just
subtle.
going in there and see what. Steve's got me figured out. So.
He's unexpected but not subtle.
Yeah.
Yeah, you might be in trouble.
Maybe Brian can Brian videotape this?
Oh, absolutely.
This is happening.
I think unexpected but not subtle is my new description for you.
and it also could be a description for the show. Unexpected but not subtle.
All right. Officer Stanko, thank you very much for doing this. Thanks for everything you do. Thanks for coming on with us and having a little bit of fun.
Happy to be
talking
here.
about some pretty serious stuff.
Yeah.
And thanks for your time.
All right.